Well, that was a lot more fun. Let's talk some Chiefs, guys. Welcome to the Chief of the North Monday mornings, or Monday mornings with the Chief of the North, whatever you want to call it. I'm Seth Kaiser, the Chief of the North, here on RGR Football. And I imagine you're in as good a mood as I am. It's been a great last 24 hours. The Chiefs just completely beat the brakes off the 49ers in a game that was close in the first half. And the third quarter contained a little bit of drama, and then they just ran away with it completely. Keep in mind that the 49ers came in a lot healthier than they'd been the week prior. They came in the number one defense in the NFL. They left, I'm guessing statistically, not the number one defense in the NFL. So that honor probably belongs to the Bills now. Congratulations, Bills, on a bye week. To the victor goes the spoils. We're still a little upset about that last week. But it was an absolutely fantastic game to watch for a variety of reasons. The Chiefs, of course, put themselves in a 10-0 hole to go down early, which I just will never quite understand. But we are here as ever early in the week to talk about some of the things that I think will, or at least should, dominate the coverage of the Chiefs for the upcoming week. This week, we've got a bye week next week, so there's going to be a 2-week time period. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things I'm going to be looking at next week, but I'm going to mostly save bye week coverage for the bye week. So the biggest story, I think, that emerged from the Chiefs beating the Niners, and there were a lot there. You know, anytime you have a game like that, you're going to have a lot of really positive stories. But the biggest thing that I thought was fun to watch and potentially impactful in the long term was, for the second week in a row, Juju Smith-Schuster had a really big week. Only this time, the rest of the offense played well as well, so it didn't get kind of lost in the ether, as it were. Juju had a touchdown, another 100-yard plus game. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he had a close to 100-yard game, or actually a little over 100-yard game on just 3 receptions. He had 111 yards. And something I'm actually in the process of writing about right now. By the time you watch this, it's going to be up on the Chief of the North newsletter. You should check it out at Minnesota Chiefs Fan, mnchiefsfan.substack.com or bit.ly/Seth Really Hates Money. You can subscribe there. But there were a few things that I thought were really interesting in their usage, and I'm going to go more in depth in the article itself. But something that I really liked, and this is something that I'm going to be diving into pretty deep here. You've got Juju Smith-Schuster at the top of the screen here. And this is something that or the bottom of the screen. This is just something that we haven't seen a lot from the Chiefs over the course of the last few years. And part of that was due to the skill set that they had. Back shoulder throws. That just isn't something. Tyreek Hill got better at it, but it wasn't necessarily his best quality. And you guys like Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, Watkins, when he wasn't healthy. When he was healthy, he was good at it. But other than that, that just wasn't their skill set. And what I want you to really notice here, and again, I'm going to be going into this more in depth in terms of what this does schematically. But the biggest thing here is the Niners are playing press man coverage here pretty much across the board. You see them trying to man up on the receivers right at the line of scrimmage. And that's something that we've been worried about this year as Chiefs fans, without Tyreek Hill creating that immediate separation. How are they going to beat man coverage? And one of their answers is right here. The back shoulder throw is an excellent answer to man coverage because when it's executed correctly, when you've got a good receiver, you've got a quarterback that throws an accurate ball, it's almost impossible to cover effectively one-on-one, just because you see the position that it puts the corner in. Juju's threatening as though he's going to run down the field. He has to open up and start to run down the field with him. And it's just tough not knowing that the ball is coming in to watch the receivers simultaneously. It puts them in a really, really difficult position. And it's something that I'm excited to see them utilizing more and more. It's something that we're starting to see more and more. But other than just that one particular type of throw, the utilization of Juju and MVS, and actually to a lesser extent, McCole Hardman, he had a few catches. He had a few jet sweep actions. He was utilized in a way that best highlights his skill set. And that was the same thing with Juju. It was the same thing with MVS. And you can kind of see it all come together when the three of them are utilized well. And that was without Sky Moore playing much of a role at all. Patrick Mahomes threw a pick that was targeting Sky Moore. It wasn't a ball that should have been thrown. The safety was waiting for it over the top, similar to the pick that ended last week's Bills game. I'm curious if one of the narratives that's going to emerge from people is, Moore needs some work. Neither of those plays were on him. That said, it's great to see Juju and MVS especially kind of continuing to push forward in the offense, especially Juju. He's the one that, and again, I'm writing about this right now. He's the one that provides that skill set that can kind of make the whole engine go a little bit. And it's one of the big stories for the week. The Niners have a good defense. Charvarius Ward was back. And they've got an excellent defense, and the Chiefs just overall did whatever they want. Part of it, though, was the offensive line bouncing back from probably its worst performance of the season against the Bills. I charted 21 flushes where Patrick Mahomes last week against the Bills was either hit, sacked, or chased out of the pocket, or hurried out, to where his throw couldn't be accurate last week. Whereas this week, the pass protection was exceptional. Now, some of that Andy Reid was providing a little bit of help schematically, but also they just played better. Wiley still had a few rough snaps here and there. That's going to happen when you're going against Nick Bosa. But overall, Orlando Brown, based at least on my first viewing, and he might be my bye week project because I'm really curious what he's looked like the last couple weeks compared to the first, 3 or 4 weeks. Because it looked like he had his second strong game in a row. I know opinions vary on how he played against Buffalo. When I looked at his snaps, I thought he played pretty well. I think 2 of the flushes were due to him. I know there's a PFF number floating around out there that he gave up 7 pressures. That's not necessarily what I saw, but reasonable opinions can vary on such things. The big thing, though, is that the offensive line as a whole looked significantly better than it had looked the week prior and really in recent weeks. So probably since the Tampa Bay game. And now they've got a couple weeks to get healthy. Joe Tooney's been playing nicked up. Trey Smith's been playing nicked up. Orlando Brown's been playing on a bad knee. Having a couple weeks off now to try to get yourself healthy for a stretch run where the schedule, at least for a while, gets a little bit easier. They've had a really tough schedule. That's a big deal. And it was great to see them play well. And you saw once again that this team is designed to win in part around its offensive line. Obviously, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, they are the sun around which the entire solar system orbits. But I feel like the offensive line this year is Jupiter. It is one of the main pieces outside of that trio nucleus that they have. And when it plays well, they play well. Another storyline that I think is going to be a big deal and something I'm definitely going to be writing about is Chris Jones. I'm just going to sit here. Chris Jones is a superstar? What a surprising thing. I've kind of been on a bit of I would call it a high horse about Chris Jones for the last several years. And that's because I do believe that he gets more guff than any elite player that I've seen, at least from his own fan base. Now, it's kind of a small subsection, but it's a loud one about this idea that he's not consistent. He doesn't get a sack. He doesn't have a sack in the playoffs. As though there weren't games that he's dominated in the playoffs. He absolutely has. I mean, even if you just look at the Super Bowl run alone, turn on the tape of the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl, and you'll see his fingerprints all over that game, regardless of what the box score says, but I digress. Jones has been unbelievable this year. So good. And because the pass rush as a whole has been underwhelming at times, stop me if you've heard this one before, the contributions of Chris Jones get overlooked. Something that's really interesting and what I'm really going to be writing about, I'm going to be looking at his snaps from this game. Maybe I'll go back to last week as well against the Bills and maybe even the prior week. I probably won't, just because I think I'll be able to get the point across looking at the film from the Niners, because the Chiefs have been kind of mixing and matching things with him a little bit. There was a whole bunch of talk about shifting Chris Jones to defensive end last year. The experiment didn't really pan out the way they wanted. It's worth noting he was playing hurt with a hurt wrist a lot of the year last year. But also, they were playing him at defensive end on first and second down. as well as obvious passing situations. And some of the run defense responsibilities of a defensive end, they just didn't fit his skill set well, especially against teams that ran read option stuff. And so it was kind of chalked up as a failure. He should be at 3-tech 24/7. But the Chiefs this year, over the last few weeks, they've started to move him to defensive end. And they've had really good, and again, this is just on obvious passing downs, and they've had a lot of success with it. Mitch and Jeff Schwartz were talking about it a little bit in terms of what that helps them do and how it helps them respond to what teams are doing to try to account for Jones and how it can help the Chiefs schematically. So we're going to be talking about that later this week, but it's something really cool to keep an eye on. The pass rush as a whole looked a lot better against the Niners. It's really been an up and down thing for them this year, and that's just kind of, I think, how it's going to look until they get another guy. Or, if Karlaftis comes along. Dunlap had a good game against the Niners, and you can see what happens when guys step up their game just another level. Frank Clark, same thing, one of his better games over the last couple of years. And you can see what that does to the complementary pass rush when it's not just Chris Jones. The defensive end stuff from him is kind of cool to watch. He's a nightmare out there. And it's harder to provide help, and teams haven't necessarily game planned to help the edges that much. Another storyline that people are going to be looking at a lot, just because it's something people have been clamoring for, Isaiah Pacheco got more work, and he looked good doing it. And what was interesting is that in a slightly smaller role, Clyde Edwards-Helaire still got a fair amount of touches, and it really still was a running back up by committee thing. He still had a ton from Jerick McKinnon. Well, not a ton, but a fair amount. He obviously had that really important screenplay on a 3rd and long that really kind of helped break the game open. They really are just going to be running back by committee most of the year. I'm convinced of this, but I do think that they're probably at their best rather than it being, 50% Clyde, 30% Jet, 20% Pacheco. I think if you make that 50% Pacheco, 30% Clyde, 20% Jet, I think that's probably where they're at their best. And I think you're going to start seeing more and more of that. So they're on a bye week now. They've got a week to figure it all out, kind of get healthy, recover from a really tough run of games. That first 7 games was pretty brutal. And of course, one of the games they lost, they're 5-2 after a really tough 7-game stretch. It's a bummer they lost to the Colts. I'm not going to lie. That's still frustrating in terms of standings and that kind of stuff. The good news is, other than the Bills and apparently the Jets, there's room there to still try to grab that 1 seed. It just depends on what the Bills do down the stretch. Losing that game to them, big bummer. Definitely, because now the Bills need to drop 2 games and the Chiefs need to go undefeated if they want to catch up because, tiebreaker, et cetera, et cetera. But they look good. They look good heading into the bye. And really importantly, something that I thought was kind of interesting. So you've got the NFL team tiers here, breaking down by EPA per play. So expected points added per play. So you've got, the offense on, going left to right, defense going, up and down. And so obviously a negative EPA per play here at the top of the screen. That's your best defenses. You see hey, the Bills got a great offense and a great defense. The Cowboys and the Broncos have played great defense. The Eagles have been exceptional this year. And so then you've got obviously on the offense, once again, way over here. And this is why Ben tweeted it this way, which is hilarious. The year is blank, and the Chiefs have the best offense in the NFL. So it's kind of interesting that despite some of the inconsistencies and despite a couple of uneven games, they are once again at the top of the NFL in EPA per play. That's a big deal. And one of the things that's interesting about that is the bad games that they've had, the tough games that they've had against the Colts and the Bills in particular. A lot of the stuff that went wrong there were self-inflicted wounds. Especially against the Colts. The Bills, they played a good game in their own right as well. The Chiefs could have done more, but the Bills played a good game too. They're really, really good defense. But despite that, the Chiefs, Travis Kelce could have caught a touchdown. They had a field goal miss. They took points off the board in their own right on multiple occasions in that game. Against the Colts, they took like 3 touchdowns off the board. It was unbelievable. So them rounding into shape, trying to figure out how it all works without Tyreek Hill, with a new wide receiver group that they're trying to figure out, and they're still right here. The difference between this time last year and this year is that the defense, rather than being like somewhere way down here, is a little below average right now in terms of consistency. You see that there's a fair number of teams that they're kind of grouped in with, that it's less than ideal, to be sure. It's not what you want, but it's not as terrible as it could be, which, hey, yay. But it's worth keeping in mind that this is a defense with a ton of young parts without a guy that I think could end up being its best corner in Trent McDuffie. Willie Gay Jr. was out for multiple games. And then, you lose Rashad Fenton as well, which a lot of Chiefs fans are kind of down on him right now, but it has been generally steady, and it was tough sledding without him because they were basically down to almost no corners. Lammons got beat badly on a play, but he's just not a guy that they game plan on having him out there against the Niners. But because McDuffie and Fenton are both hurt, that's just kind of how it went. So despite that, despite relying on a ton of rookies, despite having some injury issues, you see the Chiefs, they've got a non-terrible defense. I'll take that for right now. And we see perhaps that there might be some room for improvement moving forward here to where they can get, to that average to above average mark. We'll see. Not for now, I'll take not terrible. And another thing to keep in mind as we start to wrap up here, though, and again, those are just some of the storylines that I think people are going to be looking at this week. And if they're not, they should be. Something to keep in mind, at this time last year, the Chiefs were 3-4. And they looked kind of dead in the water. They were turning the ball over a ton. There were a lot of questions about the offense because, too high shells were beating them. And that's easy stuff to forget because so much of the focus has been on Tyreek Hill that we forget that last year with Tyreek Hill, there were a lot of those questions and a lot of angst about them this time of year. Now, things are kind of looking up for them. They've got the best offense in the NFL by EPA per play. And the only offense that anyone would even argue might be as good or better would be the Bills. And they're only 7 games in. They're much better situated now than they were this time last year, where the defense was playing cataclysmically poorly. They had one of the worst starts that the NFL had ever seen over the course of the first 5 or 6 weeks. It was very, very ugly. Things are looking a little bit better for them this year. And now, again, they've got a bye week, get healthy, figure some things out, and see how things look down the back end. As it's going to be a great bye week. And as for right now, it's an awesome bye week to be a Chiefs fan. It's an awesome time to be a Chiefs fan. I'm going to be trying to write about all the things that I talked about today. We'll see how it goes. I've got a couple weeks. But in the meantime, enjoy the bye week yourself. We'll be back here on Thursday for the mailbag questions. And once again, it's just a great time to be a Chiefs fan. I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to do all the like, subscribe, et cetera, the things that Ryan's a professional tell you what to do. And I will see you guys very soon.